Welcome back, you Washington football maniacs. Today we're going to talk about the humble pie that the Buffalo Bills gave the Washington Commanders 37-3 at FedEx. We're going to talk about some of the reasons why it happened. And then we're going to ask a general question today. Where do we go from here? How do we get back on track going forward? Because the schedule does not get easy. So 37-3, Greg. Woo! Humble pie game, man. The Buffalo Bills, they showed the Commanders what it looks like to contend. This is a Super Bowl contender. Looking at the stat line real quick. Let me bring it up because I am looking at the schedule. Give me one moment. We can do it right now. Sam Howell, 4 picks. He threw 19 for 29, 170 yards, but 3 picks. Or 4 picks. Lord have mercy. But that 4th pick, man, that's got to be one of the weirdest picks I've ever seen because the defender was so close, and I don't know if he was trying to pump. It was the weirdest. But 4 picks. If you look at the running game was actually rocking. Only 10 carries, but Brian Robinson got 70 yards, and that's another question we're going to ask about Eric Bieniemy. Is he being too soft? Is he not taking enough? It's just and then look at the receiving. Our top receiver was 2 catches for 54 yards by Curtis Samuel. Now, 4 interceptions, but you also got to add in the mix, Greg. The fumble by Antonio Gibson again. This continues to be an issue. And so that brings up, I'm bringing another question real quick tonight, man, because it kind of brings another question to mind. Eric Bieniemy is known to be a disciplinarian. Ron Rivera is more of a player's coach, right? But if you look what's going on, man, 4 picks. Now, do you necessarily want to put Brissett in there, knowing that Sam Howell is only his 4th start? He's going to be growing pains, especially when you go against a defense of this magnitude. But Antonio Gibson brings up a good question real quick, man. And is that when do you when you get to the place where it's time to bench him or consider a move at that position? Because obviously the lead back is Brian Robinson. But Antonio Gibson keeps these it's like, it's one thing to fall, but daggone it, man, you falling down the stairs every time. Like he's fumbling, and these fumbles are leading to scores, or he's fumbling in the red zone. It's like, so my question for you real quick before we ask the general question about the team overall is, when is enough with Antonio Gibson? I think this is his last year, but at what point do you bench him? Or do you see a change at the running back position? Do you see Rodriguez maybe? What do you think?
It's so hard because Antonio Gibson has a lot of talent, and he is, when he's not fumbling, he's making some really good plays.
Yeah.
He had a good run there as well, breaking free and running for, I forget how many yards it was on that big one. And of course, Brian Robinson had a really nice run there yesterday as well. So that's the frustrating thing with Antonio Gibson. It's like a live by the sword, die by the sword with him, right? He can be your best friend and your worst enemy all at the same time. I don't know when you say, look, enough is enough. I think one thing that we were harping about before, Brandon, was the fact that we were saying, let's not give it to Antonio Gibson up the middle. It seems like when he starts getting into traffic and he starts kind of spinning around, he's not quite sure where he's at, bad things happen. When he's decisive, when he catches the ball out of the backfield, knows where he's at, seems like he's holding on to the ball pretty well, good things happen. So I don't know. I think at some point, it's the same thing over and over again. We thought that he had solved his fumbling issues last year. Last year was his 2nd year. He really didn't solve them. He cut down on his fumbling, I believe, as the year progressed. I think he was sat down for a little bit though, and this year, honestly, I would give Chris Rodriguez a little bit more of the football. Now, the thing is, you look at Antonio Gibson, he's actually bigger than Brian Robinson, and so, which is kind of weird, but he can be just as much of a bruiser as Brian Robinson in some respects. So honestly, if he doesn't fumble the football, it's a perfect combination between him and Robinson. But the fact that he's fumbling the football and in crucial points of the field, crucial moments of the game, you can't have that. I don't care how good you are. You can be. I'm going to show my age. You could be Bo Jackson and Roger Craig. If you're fumbling the football, you're going to be put on the bench. And it may be time. I mean, there's already been two costly fumbles that he's had this year. It may be time for Antonio Gibson. Either they change up how they use him and not put him in those situations, or they just start using Chris Rodriguez a little bit more. I would like to see Chris Rodriguez a little bit more personally.
Yeah, it's just to me, everybody makes mistakes. This is human nature, right? We all make mistakes. But here's my thing: is that his mistakes are costly, and it happens time and time again. I like Antonio Gibson, but I've gotten into some of his fans where they're like, oh. But here's my thing: I mean, think about it in another industry. Yeah, your UPS driver might be the fastest guy to hit the route, but if he forgets your package every day, what's the point? Like, he can play ball, but if he can't hold on to the daggone ball, what are we talking about? And it just continues to be an issue. And like you said, Chris Rodriguez can play some basketball. Mm-hmm. He can play some football, man. I mean, he's a running back that I am very intrigued to see what he can do. Antonio Gibson, I don't think he has a place in this team next year. He has potential. He's definitely a guy who makes us better. But these turnovers are they're abysmal. If you look at the first turnover that he had this year, it was in the red zone. And it reminds me of what game was it? The Chargers game for a couple of years ago, where without that fumble, we could have won that game. Mm-hmm. And he fumbles in the red zone. He's ball security. I take it back to high school. Have him carry a ball around. I know he's a millionaire, but have him carry a ball around, try to punch it out. I mean, it's ball security. Something.
They did with Tiki Barber, right?
There you go. So yeah, I think that they have to see what improvements they can make in the running back room. Maybe Chris Rodriguez needs to get some touches. So looking at the broader picture of everything, obviously, look, we were 2-0. We were riding high, 2-0 for the first time since 2011. New ownership, people were feeling the buzz. Buffalo Bills, man, they showed you that maybe we're still a tier or two away from being up there with those teams, because Buffalo disposed of us pretty quickly. I mean, the game was over pretty much by the halftime. I mean, they dominated us. Our D line couldn't do much. Their own line protected them. And then if you look at any successful franchise, where's it start? In the trenches, right? And on the flip side, our own line Cosme has been decent. Nick Gates has been decent, but Wiley, and to a certain degree, Leno has been very inconsistent, man. But we still have weapons. We still have a talented defense. So, Greg, my question for you for tonight: in your mind, where do we go from here to get back on track? Because real quick, next week we're at Philly against the Eagles, so it's no rest for the weary, man. We're going right back into the fray against a contending team. So, where do we go from here in your eyes?
Well, here's a couple of questions I had. And I'm going to get to that question, but going back to the game yesterday, is where were the screen passes that were so successful against the Broncos? It seems like whenever you have a defense that is just really crunching down on your quarterback, that you start to use that aggressiveness against them. Maybe throw some of those screen passes out there that really was very successful. I didn't see one screen pass yesterday that was called at all. I think that could have helped to, possibly have gotten things on track. Could have maybe helped Sam Howell as far as getting some of that pressure off of him. I didn't see any of that, so I kind of fault Eric Bieniemy on that quite a bit. The other thing, now going into Philly, what beat Philly last year? The running game. We ran the ball down their throats last year. That's going to have to happen again. We're going to have to win the time of possession. I know that we're going to do a video on, what's going to happen in the Philly game, but, I think as a whole, not just the Philly game, but in all of the rest of the games moving forward, I think, knowing that you have what you have at quarterback right now, which is a young guy, he's developing. And I did listen to Ron Rivera's presser today, and he did mention that part of what's being called is to put Sam Howell in certain situations to see how he reacts. So it's not always, that tells me, okay, you're not always going by a game plan. It's almost like you're admittedly, okay, we may lose this game by a whole lot, but I need to find out what I have at quarterback. I understand you do need to find out what you have at quarterback, but this is the regular season. You also need to win ball games because you may not be here next year to coach. So it may not matter who you have at quarterback. So that's the thing. I think that you need to start going back to power football, running football. That's what beat Philly last year. I think that's what started Washington on a long win streak last year was running the football. You got some good backs in the backfield. I'll include Antonio Gibson if he can hold on to the football, but I think just overall, man, you gotta be able to protect your quarterback, your young guy, at the same time finding out what he can do. Because naturally, there's going to be situations, whether if you're running the football more or not, there are going to be situations where it's going to fall on Sam Howell to win you the football game. And so I think knowing that, that's when you find out what type of quarterback he is, how far he's progressed. I think you can still develop him while leaning heavy on the running game, leaning heavier on more short timed passes, because that offensive line's terrible. I mean, that's I'm just going to tell you straight up, the offensive line is horrible, and I know I've said this over again that it's going to take several games for them to gel and they'll look better. I think they will look better, but I still don't think that this is the right group up front. And that is one thing that I think that Ron Rivera, unfortunately, and his front office has really been a disappointment in, is finding the right guys up front to protect your quarterback. And these guys, I just don't think these are the right guys. Just a short few years ago, we had the likes of Trent Williams, Morgan Moses, Brandon Sheriff. I mean, we had one of the better offensive lines in the league, and went from that to, honestly, I think it's one of the worst ones in the league. May not be the worst, but it's one of the worst ones. And when you go against a Super Bowl contending team like the Buffalo Bills, they really exposed that yesterday. And unfortunately, I'll go along with that as well, that, Sam Howell, he got exposed. But I will say all this, offensive line aside, we'll speak about Sam Howell for a second. I know this is going to sound weird, but this is exactly the type of game that he needed. Why do I say that? Because you don't ever grow and learn from the things you do right. Yes, those are the right things. You want to continue to strengthen those areas, but you grow and you become better by the things that you do wrong. That those things that you try to correct. And this is true in any facet of life, but it's definitely true in football. You learn from your mistakes, and you learn to correct those mistakes. A lot of what you saw on the field yesterday, fortunately, Brandon, are very correctable, and these are things that can be cleaned up. And I think for Sam Howell, he's a very intelligent guy. He's got the right attitude, I believe. You could tell on his face, that's the first time I've seen on his face, that he was just beside himself. I mean, I think he had probably one of the worst days playing quarterback that a quarterback in the NFL could ever have, unless you're Mark Sanchez or somebody like that. But anyway, butt fumble. But anyway, I just think that Sam Howell, he has the opportunity. He can correct a lot of that. But you go against this team, Buffalo Bills, you got to give it to them. They probably deserve to be in the Super Bowl a couple of years back. Probably deserved to be in the Super Bowl last year. They are right there. So they are a Super Bowl contending team. I also don't like the idea of the measuring stick thing, too. I know I keep hearing that, like, this was a good measuring stick. You know what? All of these men, in my eyes, they put their pants on the same way. So, that makes it kind of like this God thing, right? Like, these guys are gods, and your players on your team are just mortal men going against gods. I don't see it that way. I just see it that these guys have gotten together and they have gelled. They have corrected their mistakes and are playing good football. And they've been together for a few years now, so they're at that point. There's no reason why Washington cannot be at that point. They've got a really good football team, but they are not there yet. And it showed it yesterday. So moving forward, I know I'm long answer to what seems to be an easy question, but where do they go from here? You correct those mistakes. You got some tough games ahead, but just take it one game at a time. You don't look ahead to Chicago. You don't look ahead to New York and then another game in Philly. The only game that you should concern yourself right now is Philly. And you look at what you did last year, you look at what type of team they have this year, and you put together a good game plan, and you get the ball out of Sam Howell's hands, you put it in Brian Robertson's hands, um, and you put it in Terry McLaurin's hands, guys like that, your playmakers, and let's go out and let's try to win this football game. The defense, honestly, I know that Brandon, you said the game was over at halftime. You know what though? The thing was, I looked at this game and I was like, teeter tottering so much on one little play, kind of like in the Denver game, that could have went their way. There was a Cameron Curl interception that went right through his hands. There was so many times that, I mean, there was just that much that it could have been a big play for Washington that could have went the other way. So, they kept the game within 2 scores the whole time, which is in Washington land is nothing, right? But I will say, when you get down 16 points behind somebody like the Buffalo Bills, that is definitely a tough task to come back on. So, yeah, to go from here, you don't think about anything else but Philadelphia, and you think about what you can do with Philadelphia. Hey, you know what? This weekend it's been a bad weekend for the NFC East altogether. Maybe we'll be lucky enough, and tonight will be the cherry on the top, and the Eagles can join us on the couch of sorrows. I wouldn't feel as bad, but still, that was a pretty stinky game yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I would definitely refocus yourself, right? They're correctable, but there are things that need to be corrected. Like you said, Eric Bieniemy, he's a little inconsistent with his play calling. If you look
Yes.
at week 1, you're looking like Scott Turner out there. Week 2, you look better. With this game, is like at this point, Jahan Dawson's the afterthought in his offense, and he's got to, release the pressure off of Scary Terry, man. He's got to get Jahan Dawson more involved.
I think he
I
had
believe,
one catch yesterday, maybe
yeah,
one.
yeah,
That was it.
yeah. I think only like 3 targets. I
Yeah.
mean, you got to roll with the ground game. 70 yards on only 10 carries. He did well. You got to get back on that. Ron Rivera and the decision not to kick a field goal and go for it on the 2-yard line. Look, it's okay to have these cute little nicknames like Riverboat Ron when you're winning chips, but now you just look like the dude that broke at the blackjack table. Man, you're losing more than your game in here, man. You gotta. There's times where you had to be aggressive. I get that. There's times you got to be conservative. At that point, I believe any points are better than nothing.
Yes.
And just you gotta kick a field goal there, man. He's got to kind of mellow out with taking these risks. It's okay to take risks, but after a while, if you're taking many risks and you're not succeeding, you're just, like I said, you look like the guy who's going home empty from a night at the blackjack table. You don't want to be that guy, man. So there are corrective actions. Now the O-line, hopefully they figure it out. But more often than not, we need to maybe draft a guy, sign a guy, but we've got to reinforce this O-line because, if you look at Buffalo, their O-line was rocking. They limited this defensive line. Our D-line could do nothing. I mean, he had all day to throw the ball. And but I'll say this real quick before I go to my point about the O-line. You're right. The defense did their job, but they just got there's bend the break.
Yeah.
And I'm using my boy Ed's example because he used the bend the break example. Is they bended all day, but the offense just couldn't get going between the turnovers and the lackluster play. We just couldn't. The defense is broke, and they the defense did their job. It's not on the defense, but yeah, where do we go from here? Refocus. But it has to be consistency. That we're a very inconsistent team right now. Week one, you say that we wasn't our best showing, and week two, yeah, it's the comeback's cool and all that, but you don't want to be in the position to be down 21-3. I
Yeah.
mean, because if you come back, it's a storyline. If you don't, it's just now. So we've got to, we've really got to figure it out because the schedule does not get easy.
Yeah.
The perspective changes after a game like this. It goes from, oh, these are games where we match up to, oh, I don't know, this is gonna be a tough game, man. So we've got to figure it out, but I think they will because we do have a good coach staff. Like I said, Ron Rivera, I know there's 50-50 on him. Either you like him, or you don't. Player coach, sometimes player coaches they succeed, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they lose locker rooms. He's not always the most cordial as far as what he says at press conferences. He kind of rubs people the wrong way. So it's going to be interesting to see how the players respond. But you best believe, look, Robert Ferry's got to get on his game because, it was a known fact that a lot of prospective owners who were trying to buy the team wanted us to go after Sean Payton. And that was, and that was a name that was floating around in Washington for a little bit. Obviously,
But
he landed.
He's 0-3 right now.
That's how I was about to say, man. I wonder if he wishes he would have took the job, but I'm telling
you, after yesterday.
Oh man, you think we got it bad? Lord have mercy, 70 points. That's a whole nother episode. But so yeah, I mean, we got things to figure out. But measure stick, I get it. That's kind of a term where it's like, it's the NFL. Any given Sunday, any team can win. I mean, if you look at a lot of games this year, before we wrap up, man, a lot of games this year, it has been a terrible year to pick games because I thought the Tennessee's going to do something. It's just, Derrick Henry had a bad game. It's so inconsistent overall across the board, man, because, you just can't predict games. Teams where you think they're going to get blown out, they're pulling games out. And then, and really that's something you want to see in the NFL where any given Sunday, all of a sudden Jordan Love in Green Bay looks like a real franchise quarterback. It's just so many different variables in this league. And I think one thing I like, but as far as going forward for our team, the Commanders, we have to find consistency. That's where you build the winning, man, is build consistency. So we'll see, man. Like I said, we are going to do a preview of the game against the Eagles, man. It's definitely going to be a test. But I believe that we should bounce back and play well in Philly. So before we roll out, man, you got anything else you want to cover real quick?
No, just that I heard Ed Oliver's name so much yesterday, and it wasn't our buddy Ed Oliver at all. It was,
I know.
I kept, every time I heard Ed Oliver on the, on the TV, I kept looking in, where's he at in the stands? Oh no, that's the wrong Ed Oliver.
Nah, it's not the real one, man.
It's not the real one.
Cool,
just,
man.
So just some dude who plays on the Buffalo Bills.
Right. Yeah, the guy on the Bills, man. I don't know who that guy is. I know the real one, man.
No, shout out to the real Ed Oliver.
Absolutely. So appreciate everybody, man. Like, subscribe, hit that notification button because we're going to do a lot of previews, a lot of recaps. Man, it's going to get interesting this season for the Commanders. So definitely tune in because we have a lot of good content coming your way. 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. And definitely comment below. Let us know what you guys think. Where do we go from here? What moves, what adjustments do you see the team needs to make for us to have a successful regular season? So again, appreciate everybody. And again, hail to the Commanders and peace. Everybody have a good night. See you next time.
Peace.